Hello, I'm Jack Grady, and on behalf of the Archives and History Committee of the First Baptist Church on the Square, we welcome Korean veteran Gene White. And we thank Gene for his service to our country and also for his involvement here in our church. Gene, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and visiting with us, talking a little bit about your experience in the military. Yours was the Korean period of time, and I know there's much that you have in your memory book, and we'd like to hear a little bit about your experience. Were you drafted, or did you enlist?
No, I was drafted.
You were drafted, and about what period of time was this?
It was in 1950.
1950. The Korean War had already started.
It already started. It was late 50s. I was on the farm, didn't know too much about anything but that. And I got that lot of reading.
Oh yeah, right.
I went to Fort McPherson in Atlanta, and we got on the bus then, and there was about 40 of us.
Yeah.
We went into Charleston, South Carolina, to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and for basic training.
That was your basic training place.
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for 14 weeks, I think it was.
14 weeks, wow. So tell me a little bit about your basic training experience.
Well, it was, like I said, I was raised on a farm, and I'd never been out of Georgia, really. and going in, I didn't know what to really expected.
Sure.
But when I got to South Carolina, it was amazing just to see all that stuff. And I was frightened and scared, and I didn't know what to expect.
Kind of grew up overnight.
Yeah. That's true too, and it was fun, and it was basic training. I didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
Those long hikes with field packs on you.
Oh boy, yeah.
And then carrying your rifle, they give you M1 rifle and carrying that and all.
M1 rifle.
And I carried them, and we taken basic training. And I left. They gave me, when I finished basic training, I had a week to
come home and visit, say goodbye.
And goodbye, and they got on the train. Put me on the train, and we went to California.
All the way across the country.
And I went all the way across the country on the train. Yeah. We went into Camp Drake, California. Then I stayed there about a week, and they put us on the ship. And we went straight on into Korea.
They didn't waste any time.
Didn't waste no time then. It was real exciting, but it scared at the same time.
It was. You didn't quite know what to expect.
Didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, right. But you were ready.
And I was ready to go.
Before we leave with basic training, though, tell me a little bit about that. And what was the most challenging experience you had probably in basic training? Was it how to use that M1? I bet you, since you grew up on a farm, didn't you?
I grew up on a farm, and
you'd handle a gun.
I never had nothing but a shotgun.
Oh, okay. All right. So
back growing up, I used to use a shotgun for rabbit hunting, something like that. That's it. And I given that basic training, and we had to tear it down, clean it, shoot it, tear it down, and clean it all the time. And it was things like that. But I remember that. I think the scariest I've been is we went out on the field trip. And I didn't know what to expect. We let it lay down, and we'd had to pack them on our back. And I had our M1 and had helmets and all that. And they said, well, you got to lay down, you got to crawl from here to a certain spot.
Oh, gee. And
we got down and started crawling, and they started shooting over our heads.
Oh, man.
And that scared me to death. I didn't know what it was. And they said, don't raise up. If you do, they'll hit you with the bullets. It was over the head. And you was crawling along, and dust is flying. There was little I don't know what blasting going on the side of it. Just throw dirt all over it, but you still had to crawl through that there, and that was experience.
They were simulating battle, I guess.
It was getting trained for what's going on overseas.
Sure.
And I didn't think much about it then, but I was glad when I got to Korea. I had that experience.
Oh, yeah.
But it was exciting.
Okay, now though you own the ship and you're loading with your friends on your way to Korea.
On Great Korea.
You knew you were going to Korea, I guess, at that point.
We knew we was going to Korea, and we landed in Seoul. I think it was Seoul, and we I guess there was 300 or 400 different companies coming in. They would assign us to what the position of the service would go in, and I was picked to go in for the 4.2 mortar.
4.2 mortar.
4.2 mortar.
Yeah, well, of course, you've described it a little bit when you gave the dimensions, I guess.
It was, it's a huge mortar. I mean, I don't know how I'll explain it, but it had a tube and had a real long bullet. It's that other.
How long would it fire?
It would fire for, I'd say 10 or 15 miles. I mean, you know,
that far?
Over.
My goodness, yeah.
And
like lobbing it over?
It's lobbing over.
Lobbing it over.
The front. I was on the front lines, and the mortars was kind of behind the front lines. And I was a forward observer. They made me a forward observer, and I'd go up with the front lines and call back the coordinates at a map.
Okay.
And the coordinates of where I wanted to land, and I'd call back, and they would fire over
Yes.
at the front lines.
So you had to know what you were doing, didn't you, for that? Wow.
Pretty attention, and it was, and it was scary then, but after a few days or something other, it's like everything else.
Days work?
You got used to it. You're scared all the time, but.
Were you on duty 24 hours?
I was, like I said, a forward observer. I would go up to the front lines and stay a week, 10 days.
Oh.
Then I would rotate back. Somebody else would go.
I see. So there were others in your crew that did the same thing.
It was others in the crew. It was
patrol or whatever they called it.
I think we had 4 guns that we controlled when we was up on the front lines of shooting the mortars over.
Yeah.
But it was something exciting to see. And we was up on the front lines. We was right there right in the mix of it. They were shooting at us. We were shooting at them with the mortars. It's that those.
Wow. Was there a team of you on that mortar, or was it just?
It was 4 mortars, and it was 8 men. We had to get dig the positions, and it would take about 4 men to lift the mortar.
I see.
It was that big for the base and everything, and it was something.
Had to take the ammunition with you?
Yeah, we had to take the long artillery, like shells, ammunition to go with it, shoot it, and before I went up there, I was on the team then, and I made rank. I was private, corporal, sergeant, and all that. Somebody said, "How did you make sergeant in such a length of time?" I said, "Well, I didn't really want to."
You replaced?
But it was, the war was going on.
Yeah.
They would go up, and they would get killed or wounded or something like that.
Man.
And
So
ranks are just fast.
Yeah. So you moved
on up.
You moved up rapidly because
of the
tragic occurrences that happened, and that was a constant threat for you.
It was. It was real experience. It was intense all the time.
I can imagine. Yeah.
It was.
Were you on duty? I know you had to be a forward observer. I guess you had to work in daylight time mostly.
Yeah, at daylight time you would set your. You'd call back to your positions for the mortar, and you would get the range of where you wanted the shells to drop, and the enemy started coming to you. You could just call back and say coordinates, certain, give them the map coordinates, and they'd start shooting at that area there.
Yeah, I see. Stopping those who were coming towards you. Boy, what an experience. And that went on for how long?
Well, I was in Korea close to a year. We'd go up to the front lines, I'd say, then they'd pull us back for a couple of weeks, and we'd go back, kind of shifting back. It was such a distress up there. They would do.
But altogether, you were there for a couple of years, weren't you?
I was in service for a couple of years.
In service for a couple of years.
And
you made sergeant during that period of time. Well, that was certainly is a tribute to your leadership and your perseverance and everything else that goes with it. It was a very difficult time. You were what, like 18, 19 years old when you went in?
I was 21, I think.
Oh, okay.
Something like
All
that
right.
when I went in.
All right, okay.
And I was that's 21, and it was great experience. It's just frightening to see what's going on. I mean, you would be in these foxholes, you call foxholes.
Yes.
And they would shoot these mortar rounds at you, and just that and the other, and you could just see people get shrapnel hitting people. It's just terrible up there.
So you were firing mortars.
I was firing mortars at them, and they were firing mortars
at you.
Shooting back at us. Yeah.
Oh boy! And this went on day after day after day.
Yeah. Yeah. They would. I guess they would. The main artillery was back farther, and they were the big guns, they call them out, and they would come over.
Like 5-8 shells or something like that.
They was shooting over there. It was very exciting, but yet it wasn't. It was amazing. They had these Korea, if anybody ever seen it, it's just hills after hills after hills, and you'd get up on one of these hills, and you could look down, see down in the valley. You had binoculars, and you could see enemies down on the next hill over there.
You could see them. You could actually see them.
You could actually see them over there. But they had these trenches on top of these hills that they could dug down trenches that they could walk around, and you couldn't see them over there. But it's the deep. They could walk certain areas of there that you couldn't see them. But it was a real experience.
Yes. So you went over there in 1950, and you were in service for 2 years. But about how long were you in Korea?
I was in Korea approximately 11 months or a year, something like that. I can't remember real offhand. And after I was there, we had R&R, and we'd come back to Japan. So I was lucky enough to have enough points, they called it.
Oh, yeah.
And they brought me back to Japan, to Hokkaido, Japan. That's the northern tip of Japan. And I stayed there just in training.
Rest.
I was in charge of a squad over there then.
I see.
And I stayed there about 3 or 4 months. Then our ship was shipped back to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Got back to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I got my discharge at Fort Benning, Georgia.
So, how long was it before you were discharged after you came back? Just a few months.
After I got back to Fort Benning, I stayed there about 3 months, 2 or 3 months. Then I was discharged.
I see. Yeah. Okay. All right.
And I think the war was coming pretty close to the end.
Just about over at that point.
That time.
Yeah. Well, it's quite an experience, and I'm sure you've reflected on that many times over the years since. You've told us all about your experience in the trenches and up there and forward lookout and so forth. I noticed you've got a book. Is that a record of?
That's the first cavalry book that they gave me. It was printed in June from 1950 to January of 1952. The first cavalry had got pictures of all the.
That's the first cavalry.
First cavalry division, the 4.2 mortar company.
Yeah, you've got pictures of
And I have pictures of it, of all the trenches I was in, and I can remember distinctly the first night that the first months I was in Japan, not Japan, Korea, we was eating sea rations up on the line. Lots of sea rations up there. And we was planned to have a turkey, all the dressings and all of that for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I strictly remember that, and I was looking so forward to that.
Yeah, I bet.
And the night before that, before Thanksgiving, they mortared our kitchen and blowed it all.
Oh, no.
All up. So we had a nice Thanksgiving. We had more sea rations.
More sea rations.
More sea rations.
Oh, boy.
And
wow.
it's just experiences like that there. It was just, it just demolished our kitchen. And,
sure.
And I think it killed or wounded most all the players.
Is that right?
And you would just go along, and it's horrible to just. When we had these battles, you see the wounded coming back, and it's just eye-opening.
Some from your own outfit, I guess. Some of your own unit.
Some of my buddies.
Your buddies
have arms blown off or something like that.
Gee.
There, it's.
Do you ever have any communication with them after the war?
I did for a couple of years, but it's like everything. I lost communications with them. This, that, and other. And I don't. Today, I don't hear from any of them.
Sure, I can understand
they
that.
Moved on.
Yeah. Well, you've got a treasure there with all these pictures, and talk about your buddies. I'm sure some of those that worked with you. There's a mortar group right there.
Yeah, there's a mortar group, and there's pictures of the native, the Koreans, families.
Oh, you got them in there too? Yeah.
All this.
Yes.
And have pictures of the first Chinese, Korean was captured. I have pictures of those. And just people just wounded laying around. It's just.
So you had a photography outfit somewhere.
It was a photographer would come, float around and stay there a couple of days, and it was moving over different divisions of the First Cavalry.
But then when everything was over, it took some time to put this together, I'm sure, by that outfit. So they send it to you later? Is that how you got the book?
Excuse me. They said they sent the books.
Even
and I have the name of all the First Cavalry.
Oh, good. Yeah.
In the back.
Wow.
And my name back there is listed. It all the companies and each division of the First Cavalry patch and all that.
Yeah.
It's real interested in the generals, and it's just.
Who is this right? Is that MacArthur?
That's MacArthur.
General MacArthur.
And it's just.
And General Ridgway. I remember reading about him.
I have pictures of
Major Gay. Yep.
And I have all the pictures in here.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Little stories about them.
Oh yeah, great. That is a treasure.
It's real interesting. And glance back everywhere, and your memory comes back.
Yes.
It was
had some
real exciting times and real scary times.
Oh man, I can imagine.
It's.
You were on the front lines.
Yeah, I was right there, standing right in the middle of it. And
those mortars must have made a sound. Did they come in over? Whistling?
Yeah. It was
whistle or something?
It was a.
Oh, okay.
And the whistle goes in. And when you hear that whistle, you better hit the ground and duck. I was stayed right on a 38 parallel. I was fighting right
Oh, yeah,
on
we
the 38th parallel.
I've heard a lot about that during Korean War.
Korea and
The 38th parallel.
I guess
And it still is in place, and it's
I think
identified.
So. I think identified as North and South Korea.
Yeah, right. That's the breaking point.
Breaking point of it. And that's where a lot of the fighting was going on in that area.
Yeah.
And we hadn't had an old, I guess our worst little battle I was in at a mountain over there, we called it Baldy.
Baldy?
It is so much artificial bombing and shells come in. It wasn't a tree or nothing. It was just dust.
A naked mountain.
Naked mountain over there. We would take it and we'd stay there a couple of days and they'd come back and we'd have to retreat.
Oh, you went back and forth.
And on that mountain, I run around that, and they would, and we would make a push and go back and take it back over, and it was.
Oh, we called it Baldy.
We called the mountain Baldy.
Well, because it was bald. Well, it's certainly a tribute to you that you made sergeant so fast, but that was because of your leadership ability, I'm sure. And your...
Well, I guess it was my leadership, and it was, like I said, it was, the ranks was we was losing people, wounding people so fast, and
the job you had was vulnerable. You were right out there on the front lines.
Yeah, I was right in the front lines where I could watch the enemy, see them, and make a call back and make a suggestion where to drop the mortar shells at.
And when the day was over, it was not a matter of you going to the chow hall and eating dinner, a nice dinner. You had your sea rations right there in the trench.
Especially on the front lines. Now, when you go back, you could have regular meals at tents there. Okay. But on front lines, at times they would bring it up to you. But most times, if it was, you had your sea rations. But at night, you'd go on patrols, and they would try to infiltrate your lines and come through them. And it wasn't a dull moment over, I'll tell you.
Sure.
It was.
Well, Gene, any other memories that you'd like to share with us from your experience?
No, it's, I'm glad I had the experience.
Yes. You grew up.
It made me realize how important life was.
Oh, yeah.
It was, and it's like you said, you just had to trust in God to pull you through.
Yes.
If you didn't have belief, it would have been tough.
Oh, I'm sure.
But you know the Lord's with you all the way.
Right.
And
that's an excellent statement, and I appreciate you sharing it.
It was exciting times, but it was scary times.
Yep. Well, that kind of leads us, I guess, to after the war and how long you've been here in our church. I know a number of years, but we're glad you came our way.
Well, I lived in Fairburn, Georgia.
Fairburn. Yeah.
Fairburn.
Close to Atlanta.
Close to Atlanta. And I was working for Colonial Stores.
Oh, yeah.
And we closed the little store that I had, and they moved me to Hogansville. Mm-hmm. So I was living in Hogansville when I went in service.
Oh, okay.
And
you mean you had already started working for the grocery company before you went in?
I already started working
for the grocery company. All right. I wasn't sure.
And I worked in Hogansville, and next door was the little jewelry store, and had a guy in it. And at that time, I was living in a boarding house. Mm. And he begged me to go home with him one weekend. Yeah. He lived in Lafayette, Alabama.
Oh, yeah, I know it well.
So I went home with him to Lafayette. Well, it's outside Lafayette, it's Dunleville.
In the country?
In the country. And he had a couple of his sisters was not married, they was there. Mm-hmm. So I went home with him, and I just tell somebody I still going back. Okay. And That's before I went in service.
Yeah.
I seen him.
Yeah, okay.
And me and Adeline corresponded all the time I was in service. I wrote her every week, every when I could, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And she wrote me, and
Yes.
sometime I wouldn't get a letter. I'd get 7, 8 letters
All at one time.
at one time, and it'd be 2 weeks before I get another one or something like that.
Yeah.
And we went together, and we got married, and
When you came home.
I came home,
Yeah.
and
Well, that was a blessing, though, to have her
And,
waiting for you back home.
and I was, and we got married in Hogansville, and I was still with Colonial Stores, and I stayed with them for 37 years.
Did you?
I worked 37 years with them, and I had 3 children.
Colonial Grocery Store.
Colonial Grocery Store. And they sold out, and they moved to, they bought some people in Europe bought them out, so they closed the store down. And I went to work with Piggly Wiggly.
Oh, yeah, very.
And I worked in the Valley. And I worked at Piggly Wiggly in Cherry Valley, Cypress Center. I was manager there for 32 years.
In West Point.
West Point.
Yeah, I know it well.
And I had,
Cherry Valley.
we had 3 children. Michael, the oldest, and Deborah, and David was the youngest.
Yes.
And David had cancer, and he passed away 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
6 years ago, and it's been kind of a tough time then.
I'm
but
sure it was.
we, but we enjoyed the leadership of the church here, and this, that, and the other. I think we've been members here for about, I don't know for sure, but close to 35, 40 years, something like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, we're glad that you are part of our church and active in Sunday school and other events.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, well, then that's about it.
Yeah. Well, Gene, again, we do appreciate so much you coming and visiting and sharing your military experience. We're proud of your military service, and we are happy to have you in our church. And thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Appreciate being.